So I guess you know that my name's Lindsay Anderson, and I am here to introduce Geoff Parker and the rest of the panel for today's Get Ready for the Platform Transition. So Geoff is the co-author, along with Marshall Van Alsten, who you may remember from participating in past symposiums, of the book Platform Revolution. So he certainly knows his platform stuff. And I am done, because I don't know my platform stuff.
All right, that's awesome. The shortest introduction ever. I love it. Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you everyone for finding your way here after lunch. So we have a great panel for you today, and what's really neat about it is the kind of differences in industry and perspective. So we have Adriana Karaboutis, who is relatively new as the CIO of National Grid. And we have Mannu Lodha, who's the Director of Industry 4.0 for Tetra Pak. And we have Ryan Mallory, Senior Vice President of Global Solutions for Equinix. And Frank Polgers, Head of the Chief Digital Office for Deutsche Bank. So the way I'm going to structure this is we have a number of questions, and I've asked each panelist to take a lead. And before they do so, maybe each panelist can just take about 2 minutes to say a little bit more than I did in terms of background, and just to sort of share a couple of thoughts about how you landed in the seat that you're in. But before we get to that, I want to share a little bit of background. So it's hardly news that we're in sort of the midst of a massive kind of transformation in the economy. And that's happening for lots and lots of reasons, many of them technology-driven, from storage, compute, and transmit of data. So the lens that we're going to take in particular in this panel is sort of twofold. One is kind of where are you in your digital transformation as a result of these larger forces of technology that are operating kind of across the board. And then more specifically, and where appropriate, as we've sort of discussed amongst ourselves, how is your firm addressing this notion of platforms, and in particular, the growth of firms that are organizing external entities to then start to act like bigger firms than they necessarily are, and the ways in which they're potentially or already disrupting you or kind of impacting your business. So that's sort of the header. We'll probably talk for, say, about 40, 45 minutes. And then I understand that the fancy Slido thing is fancy and sometimes works, but evidently not today. So we'll just kind of do it the old style way and take questions from the audience live. So nothing really super off the wall, which is what we can filter with Slido. But that should be just fine. So with that, Mannu, I'm going to actually ask you to kind of take the lead on how has your industry changed in the last several years, and think about that from sort of the competitive landscape as well as the way in which these technologies are changing kind of on you in real time. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of your firm.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mannu Lodha, and I work for Tetra Pak. I work in the digital team at Tetra Pak, and at Tetra Pak, we provide integrated solutions in packaging, processing, and services for the food and beverage industry. To come to the topic, in terms of what is happening in the CPG space. So the top 3 things I see on the CEO agenda in CPG context, the number 1 thing is around digital, So how can we use and apply digital technologies to drive sort of operational efficiencies at scale, And how can we use and apply digital technologies to drive new revenue? I think this is the number 1 topic, I think, on the CEO agenda at our customers. I think the other thing that is very relevant for our customers is the topic around e-commerce. How do we sort of reconfigure our supply chains to cater to new demands coming from the e-commerce channel? And last but not the least, another key topic is around sustainability and sort of, all the new directives coming around single-use plastics and sort of, recycling, how we think about recycling, waste management systems is also a very pertinent topic on the CPG agenda. So as I think about competition then in this context, what has happened in the last 3 to 5 years is, we provide system solutions, integrated solutions for our customers. There is a lot of sort of disaggregation happening now, driven by our customers. They are sort of unbundling the solution play, and a lot of non-system suppliers have come into the equation, and they of course compete. They're providing good quality solutions at a lower cost. So Tetra Pak has to of course then respond with sort of new digital sort of technologies as well as sort of solutions around sustainability and raise the bar when it comes to the value conversation with our customers.
So yeah, that's a great kickoff. And I particularly like this point about sort of non-vertically integrated or bundled service providers coming in to pick off some of the higher margin pieces and the ways that they're able to do that. If anyone else wants to follow up on the question, which I'll remind you is, kind of how has your industry changed in the last 3 to 5 years, and how is the competitive landscape changing? Otherwise, I'll move on.
I think that,
So Ryan, just say a little bit about you when you first speak.
Yeah, Ryan Mallory with Equinix. We're a global interconnection provider. So a little different than an enterprise that my counterparties up here, or my peers up here, represent. We provide the services for our platform. So a little bit different view. And so when Mannu and I have been talking, his viewpoint around creating a digital supply chain is fantastic, because what we really want to see out in the marketplace and what we see from a trending perspective is the evolution of the data and how you analyze that information. We've seen massive changes in the supplier side of the platform itself. So Equinix is fully committed to delivering what we're calling Platform 2.0, which is looking at fundamental core and evolving assets to be able to enable that platform with network edge strategy, cloud edge strategy, compute edge strategy, so you can take that digital service and supply chain, get that information, and then be able to act on it. The number one driver that we're seeing in this platform evolution is getting the data, but then being able to act on it in a relevant amount of time. And so that's where we see this from a service provider standpoint really evolving, is analyzing and acting on data.
Yeah, so hello, I'm Karaboutis. I am the Chief Information and Digital Officer at National Grid. Just 1 second on National Grid, because I think most people think it is a utility company in Massachusetts, New York, and Rhode Island only. Actually, we're a British multinational company headquartered in London, and we do power for all of UK, transmission of gas and electricity in the UK, and transmission and distribution in areas of the 3 states I just talked about. And for any of you that think we can read your faces to see what's interesting or not, we can't see anybody but the first row, because there's lights glaring at us. So if you're falling asleep, really nod over so we can see the movement. So I've been at National Grid 21 months. I was the Chief Information Officer at Dell. I spent 3 years at Biogen in biotech, and then I was 20 years in the auto industry, both at Ford and GM, just for good measure. For me, coming to where I'm at has been around IT and computer science as my backbone, and really traversing industries and taking lessons learned and ideas, et cetera, what to do and not to do to different industries as I've learned the industry. So when we think about National Grid as a utility, a lot of people fully recognize that we're very asset intensive. We have substations, both for gas and electricity, and we try to keep those substations very secure. When we think about digital capabilities on the operational side of the business, we also have to measure very heavily what putting digital sensors and things like that around those asset-intensive structures means from a cybersecurity perspective. So there's always that side to balance. Having said that, as with every industry, customer choice and consumer sentiment has become very, very important. Now, many of you may say, but utilities are a natural monopoly, and certain areas you have no choice but to connect to a National Grid or an Eversource or what be it. Used to be true. What we're seeing is, with the onset of more and more sources of energy, hydro, solar, the traditional sources, as well as wind, more and more sources of energy are coming online, and the utility doesn't own those sources of energy, but it's our job to connect to them and transport them. As people think of low carbon footprint, as people think about they want choice where their energy comes from, et cetera, we now have a huge opportunity to create platforms around the consumer choice, preferences, and things like that. And if you think about billing, if we think about people may want to buy a weekend's worth of electricity and gas, like they buy parking meter parking for their car, then all of a sudden it changes the game from you hook up to my utility, I will send you a bill at the end of the month. And so the consumer choice, the technologies like blockchain and things like that are out there have actually really changed the game. And for us, that's the area around the consumer side we're thinking of, as we're also doing some digital capabilities on grid operations and asset management.
And Frank Pulgers, hi also from my side. I'm working with Deutsche Bank based in Frankfurt. I'm a member of the retail banking business division, and in that division I am the head of the chief digital office and responsible for large parts of the digital strategy in our home market in Germany, where we serve approximately 20 million retail banking clients and a few 100,000 commercial clients. And being in that industry is quite a challenge, but really interesting as well, because I think that the banking or the financial services industry, especially in Europe, but to some extent also worldwide, is experiencing tectonical changes, right? So from a client's perspective, client demand is changing significantly. Clients are expecting superior digital services and offering superior UX. And clients want that kind of marketplace experience. They want to compare a little bit. They don't just want products from one single product provider. They want to choose and compare products from different providers, which is what they are used from Amazon Marketplace, for example, right? And the interesting thing is that non-banks, such as Amazon, for example, do now define the benchmark for digital experiences for banks, for example, right? And that is a situation that is very, very new to most bankers worldwide, right? In addition, we're having fun with the regulation, of course, as well. In the European Union, the EU, for example, we have the Payment Services Directive 2, which requires every single bank in the EU from September 2019 onwards to provide a standardized API, enabling every third-party provider to get access to clients' data, as long as, of course, if clients are happy with that. So that makes things much easier for fintechs, and that was the original intention of this PSD2, Payment Services Directive 2 regulation, to make it much easier for those fintechs to get access to clients' data stored in bank systems. However, that's of course a perfect situation for the big techs as well, right? Especially for the US platforms, because suddenly they just need one standardized API, and then they can access the entire EU banking market, right? And based on that, from my personal point of view, clients in the EU are served on a silver platter to some extent to those big techs, right? And that is something where banks in the EU need to find the right strategic answer. And as part of this strategic context, I am responsible for defining our answer to this, for defining and implementing the platform strategy that we started approximately 5 years ago. We as Deutsche Bank only started in 2014 approx, when we also established our Chief Digital Office, because until then we were kept busy with dealing with the consequences from the financial crisis 2008-2009, which also shows what probably the most expensive thing or the most expensive outcome of the financial crisis has been from a Deutsche Bank perspective, but maybe from the perspective of some other banks as well. It was probably not the fines that we had to pay because of those things that happened in 2008-2009. It is probably the fact that we were kept so busy with dealing with such matters that we missed many years getting ready for the platform revolution and getting ready to provide what clients are asking for in terms of digital products and services. So, challenging industry, I would say.
Great summary and great kickoff. So, Adriana, I'm going to ask you to take lead on, and then everyone to kind of weigh in, Where would you say your enterprise is in terms of this transformation that's been happening? And be honest. Say, we've actually done X.
Oh, well, that changes my answer now.
But Y is both challenging and remaining to be done.
So the enterprise, let me talk about the industry for a second. I mean, anybody who, if you look at Gartner or even intuitively, you know that, financial services, where Frank is at, is probably at the higher end of digitization. Utilities, heavy manufacturing, et cetera, is at the lower end. At National Grid, we're on a great journey right now. I think we're starting from a position of tremendous vision and support relative to what we want to do on digital. So if you think about what I talked about before around the customer, the recognition that we need big, hairy, audacious goals, and our CEO actually calls it BHAGs, around the customer, where we think about not just, how do we do a better IVR system, but how do we get to a point where you don't need an IVR system, right? Where things are handled. If I need a connection made, I can get onto a mobile app, I can schedule it, I can get it done. I don't need to call into somebody. When you think about meters, advanced metering infrastructure, and how it actually talks to, it phones home, and it talks to, central locations that can actually do all the things that we need to do, or modernization programs, we're at the point where we're thinking about things in a BHAG way. For customer, you don't need anybody servicing it, becomes self-service. For assets, they're self-healing. They phone home. You don't have them on a predictive maintenance schedule to go on predict. There's a sensor that says the bushing is leaking, the circuit breaker's about to go, and it phones home and we know it. So it's that touchless, humanless, if you want to think. Now, is that something that we will be able to get to right away? No, but once you set those BHAGs, then you can start moving towards them. Where we are literally, Geoff, is we've got 2 pilots running. I'm actually headed to the UK Friday for a Hack of Future, which is to talk about what are those ideas that get us closest to that vision, and how do we move those forward. Now, I don't want to leave everybody with the impression that we're all out playing with your meters and things like that. We are working very closely with our regulators and our constituents to ensure that everything that we're doing on the regulated and non-regulated side of the business is toward that goal of customer and constituent. And that does slow us down a little bit, right? We're not a California startup, right? But we have the mindset, and that's how we're operating. So pilots is the truth. And then we're moving forward to the goal. And the platform economy does start coming into play on the consumer side for us.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. We look at it a little differently because we're also a platform provider, but also a platform consumer. And so from a consumption standpoint, we call it Equinix on Equinix because we want to use the platform we're presenting out to the marketplace. We today, as an enterprise, consume 59 different cloud providers, IaaS, SaaS, and PaaS. And so this focal point that we have around our Platform 2.0 model that we're offering out to the marketplace, we're using that internally. So we figured out how to bridge, the ServiceNows, the Workdays, the ADPs, all of the SaaS and PaaS providers that we're all consuming on a daily basis, but using that in a secure manner that allows us to have predictable usage bills, understand the workflows, who's accessing it from a security perspective. That's the internal consumption side. What we offer out to the marketplace is a dynamic platform that allows you to connect to your counterparties that you can really start to look at how do I need to optimize my edge strategy? What does my digital strategy out in the marketplace need to look at? And we're really starting to evolve that now. The reality is, the internal side is a little further along than the external, just because of the way we consume that, and that was a priority. The external model, what we've seen is that the marketplace, from an enterprise perspective, is just starting to move into that adoption wave, and so there's a lot of heavy lifting that we need to help with and understand around how people need to consume it, what do their IT staffs look like, and then what do we really need to enable, because our product teams and our engineering teams go off on these science projects and say we need all 4,000 feature sets available on the platform when really we need 3. And so that's really, when we look at this from a consumption of the platform perspective, it's about understanding what the customer really wants, enabling that, and then making sure that we can present it in a manner that's really usable. The standard brick and mortar supply chain platform model is evolving to what's easy to use, what's relevant, and then how can I gain the cost savings and efficiencies around it.
That was really succinct.
Yeah.
So at Tetra Pak, we've been on the digitization journey for a very long time. This morning, Mark presented, some of what we are doing around in terms of, our data and integration platforms for inside Tetra Pak, right? However, in terms of transforming our business model and, our value proposition towards our customers, I think the journey is just getting started. So we have a lot of internal initiatives in the context of smart factories, applying Industry 4.0 capabilities to our own factories and things like this. We have a smart sales program as well to transform our sales force in a way, to just start to think about how are we going to start to sell solutions now. We've been selling products in the marketplace for a very long time. How do we transform our business model to sell solutions? So there are programs ongoing. Now we want to take all the lessons learned that we have applied to ourselves, also to our customers. So that journey is just getting started. And by the way, in terms of digital maturity, food and beverage sort of industry as a whole is sort of, in early stages, even around digitization. So digital applications in terms of transformation of new business models, I think is going to take some time in terms of adoption.
Great.
Actually, pretty much the same with Deutsche Bank. From a digitization perspective, we've done that since many years, but from a transformation of the business model perspective, our journey started a few years ago, and that's still a long way to go as well, right? And we also need to find out what do customers really want from banks, what kind of banks products do customers want, what kind of beyond banking products do customers want, and how can we provide that in the most efficient way in order to ensure that clients really buy those products and services, right? We do now have approximately 25 corporation partners live running this platform-based business model with us and selling their products and services to our clients, and that are banking and beyond banking products. So that works. Some of them don't work, and we took them off our platform again, trying to find out what works, what doesn't work. A very few of them already start scaling. Do we exactly know why? Not in every case, right? So that's interesting as well. Probably the biggest challenge, and where we are also at a very early stage, is our data analytics capabilities, right? So as a bank with almost 20 million private customers, we have tons and tons of data, which we could use in a very efficient way in order to provide very curated, personalized services to our clients. But do we have sufficient capabilities? No, for sure not. And that is something that will take us very busy for the next few years in order to build and implement a sufficient data structure, a data lake, and all the capabilities one needs to run real data analytics, and at a certain point in time, artificial intelligence as well. Are we there yet? For sure not.
So actually, I'm going to ask a follow-up, Frank, which is, listening to you, what would you say kind of your biggest lessons learned have been, and maybe what are some distinct challenges and perhaps surprises as you've been trying to roll out these kinds of strategies?
From a lessons learned perspective, as we heard already today, digitalization means implementing a fundamentally new way of doing business and creating completely new value change, which is a very radical change for traditional companies such as Deutsche Bank, right? And the most important thing is once one has agreed on the strategy, right? How do you want to position your company in the context of the shift from a producer's economy to the platform economy? Once you have understood how this strategic context impacts your company and your industry, and once you have defined how do you want to position yourself, do you want to be a platform provider, do you want to be a product or commodity provider, do you want to be a tech provider, right? Once you have agreed on that, and it took us many months to discuss that and to agree on that, what do we want to do, what do we want to achieve, to agree exactly that with your CEO. One cannot run such a business model transformation without the complete alignment and agreement with your CEO and a CIO or head of IT. And we were very lucky that our CEO, one of his 5 key strategic beliefs our banks becoming platforms, and he very much supports us in the things we do. Because as you can imagine, that means a lot of change, transforming the entire business model, and change always produces some pushback in the organization, right? However, we experienced a lot of pushback, which surprised me a little bit until I understood why. Because that was not the normal pushback that comes up when there's some change in the company. It was because people didn't understand what we do. And they didn't understand because we didn't explain it to them in a sufficient way. And that always leads me to the conclusion that whenever one wants to do such a significant transformation, make sure that you tell people what you are doing, why you are doing that, and what that means from a middle and long-term perspective. There's no other way to manage pushback than explaining and educating people. And also, if one wants to implement a digital culture, which is a buzzword to some extent from my perspective, that always requires education as well. Because if people don't understand context, they won't follow you, right? And also, for example, taking this payment services directive, 2 examples that I mentioned earlier, this probably biggest game changer for the financial services industry in the last 50 years. If I would have asked 10 people of Deutsche in Deutsche Bank's head office 2 years ago, they know what PSD2 is about, probably 9 of them would have said no. And I would have said no as well if I wouldn't be part of the Chief Digital Office. And that is a very, very important thing. Make sure that you explain people what all that is about. Because if that doesn't happen, you create channel conflicts, conflicts between traditional business channels and those new digital platform-related business channels, and that never helps. That always creates lots of inefficiencies, right? Another key takeaway is make sure, if possible, that you ring-fence budgets. We didn't do that at the beginning, so we were, with the IT budgets and non-IT budgets as well, always competing internally how much of IT allocation budgets and resource allocations do we get in order to run our business model transformation. That doesn't help as well, because there's too many interest in the organization, too many fights about budgets, and one cannot implement such a radical change, such a business model transformation without having budgets in place and not discussing budgets on a quarterly basis. So that is, from my point of view, extremely important. However, I know that in real life that might be a difficult thing to achieve, right? And another key takeaway, as I mentioned, should we have started even earlier with our data transformation, and should we have focused earlier on data strategy? Yes, that is probably a point that I personally underestimated as well. Of course, I knew how important it is, and that if we want to leverage the huge asset that we have as a traditional bank, one of the few assets, right? Existing client relationships and tons of data. We should have done and tried even more to improve our data analytics capabilities much earlier. That is something that we suffer a little bit from at the moment. Probably another takeaway, but that won't surprise you. Be aware that normally things take longer than expected, and they might be a little bit more expensive than expected. But nevertheless, the time will come, and I talked to Geoff about that earlier, when the first new use case, the new product starts to scale and you start making money, right? And make sure that you share that with everybody involved, that you celebrate the first successes, and that you show to people, that you show to the organization that is not digital theater, that is not that kind of strange digital innovation stuff. Here we are making money and we are generating client feedback that is meant very positive, and that clients like what we do, no matter if the product that we offer to our clients is provided by Deutsche Bank or by a third-party provider. And if you succeed in doing that, that also provides an answer to the cannibalism thing that normally organizations run into when you provide a platform that offers third-party products and solutions as well. Feedback from the organization internally is that means that we are cannibalizing ourselves. Yes, of course we do, because if we don't do it, someone else does it, right? And if you nevertheless can make money and generate top line with that, that's all you need in order to have the proof of concept, and that is then the starting point for the next phase of your transformation.
So I'd like to add one thing to what Frank said.
Yeah, so
Couldn't agree
lessons
more.
learned
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
surprises.
couldn't agree more. We're not quite as slow as the banking industry. We're a little faster, but there's also an element of piling on a bit about you need to know what the company wants to do. The CEO and the board need to have alignment. And then you need to agree how you are going to do something and how you're not going to do it. Too often we set strategic goals saying this is what we want, but strategy is truly around how are we going to get there and what road are we not going to follow to get there. Because if you leave something to everybody will have an opinion. My favorite is customer centricity. We are customer centric. I always say, well, if we're customer centric, what does that mean? Do we want to be best at service? Do we want to be best at price? Do we want to, well, we're very customer centric. Then give the electricity and the gas away for free. The customer will love you. But that's not what we're going to do. So it's really important to say we agree on where we're going, to Frank's point, and how are we going to get there and not. There's also some brass tacks basics that we can never lose sight of. The platform economy is tremendous. And the retail industry is probably up here on it. We're probably somewhere in the middle, et cetera. But how you achieve is really important. Architecture, right? When I came to National Grid, we did not have an enterprise architecture team. We disbanded it because they did ivory tower things. It's sort of like saying, well, we decided to stop breathing because we were having a hard time breathing. So we just sort of disbanded it, right? And my crackerjack chief enterprise architect is right there. She came to me from TJX and stood up a whole organization. And what that helped us do is say, okay, where are we going? Now, how do we get there? What are the common platforms we're going to use? And I use platform as a small p, but it will lead to the big P, the platform strategy. You can't underestimate data to the point that Frank made, your data models, where it lies, how you're going to use them, et cetera. And you need to have good old-fashioned architecture to really help you get there. So I can't emphasize that was a huge lesson learned, I think, for us.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, man.
Sure. So yeah, I guess from Tetra Pak perspective, I can come in on 2 points. I think building on both the comments made here, I think the center of gravity in a lot of the conversations has to shift from sort of the how. There is a lot of inspiration from technology. So, a lot of the conversations, on the business side, on the IT side is always, blockchain and artificial intelligence and machine learning and all. It has to come out of that into the why and the what. What are we trying, why are we doing this? What's the North Star? And be very clear about it. And then what are we trying to do as well? The things that we want to solve for, the problems we want to solve for, you have to be super clear about it. And then I think a lot of technology can come into play, so to speak. And I think a big lessons learned for us is that all these conversations we are having around digitalization and our strategy, it's a lot focused around technologies. The second point I want to come in on is at the end of the day, we have a saying in Tetra Pak, dream big, start small, but most of all start. You get into a lot of these loopy conversations around, this person X opinion, person Y's opinion in terms of what is the right thing to do, and you never get out of the building. You never validate your assumptions with the customer, and you lose the time window. So you go into these cycles of 12 months, 14 months strategy projects, and then you sort of miss the window of opportunity with the customer. So.
Yeah, I think that, echoing on what my peers are saying, from an Equinix perspective, what we missed early on from a platform perspective is asking the why and the what. Why do you need a platform? What are you going to use it for? And like I said, we started out with some great feature sets and science projects, and guess what? They weren't relevant. And so we really had to take a step back, and our CEO said, hey, we want to focus on the 4 Ps and the C. We want people, we want the right people involved in this from a technology standpoint, a business development standpoint, and a customer standpoint. We want the right platform. What are we trying to do with it? And we look at it from the platform architecture, the big P, how we're going to deliver that out to the business, the partners. We want the right counterparty partners on there. We're lucky our business focuses on clouds, interconnection, interconnection, vertical networks, those types of things, and then profitability, and not about making money, but making sure we're making the right capital investments to provide the platform that needs to be out there in the market. And the C is the customer. And so if you figure, it's a 4-quadrant box with the C in the middle, we have to understand what the customers need and what they're trying to do from their data flows standpoint and the architecture standpoint, because we become mutually aligned counterparties as we're trying to develop this to roll it out to the market. And so you can have the best idea and the best product, but if nobody's buying it, it's just an idea. And so that's where we've had to take some hard knocks on that over the past couple of years, but take a step back, and we've seen that move into a consumption model that's out surpassing anything we've seen from an internet and cloud consumption just on standalone binary products that are out in the market.
I'm just going to summarize a little bit because I think that was probably one of the most succinct set of answers I've heard in doing this kind of thing. And this alignment and education piece, which in my own industrial experience, I was at General Electric for many years with the healthcare division, and when we would try to do new things, you could easily get out in front of the rest of the organization and suffer the consequences. So that, and then, and it's especially true for large organizations with significant resources. The challenge is to do everything, which is pretty much a recipe for doing nothing. And I think we're hearing again and again this notion of picking a battle, solving it, celebrating the success, and then picking a battle and sort of iterating. So with that, I want to dive, and we'll open it up for conversation in about 5 minutes. So we heard a lot about different organizations, and so I want to just drill in on this notion of partnering and the ways in which, as you make these transformations, you're interacting with external entities in a different way, especially on the supply side. Because in the past, you would have had this sort of contracting, sort of procurement mindset. And that changes a lot as you potentially open these systems up. And I'd like to hear a little bit about how you manage that sort of external supplier base or partner base differently, and what sort of how you've thought about that. What sorts of resources have you had to put around that are different than the old kind of procurement days? And I'm happy to have Ryan maybe take that, because you talked about this 50 sort of groups, and that sounds kind of complicated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us about that.
And so from our business model, it's all about the partnerships and the ecosystems. And so we take a very focused view from the platform perspective on an at or a buy. An at means it's the ecosystem that sits around our platform that connects to it. We want that to drive the connectivity, the availability, and the overall platform value, not just to us, but to all the customers and our partners that are out there. The buy would be if we were going to develop it ourselves. And we look at this as, as kind of the center of the digital economy that provides interconnection. Do we have market privilege and permission to go out and do this? So we did for the fabric, or the switching platform that's enabling the ecosystems for the networks and the clouds and the verticals that sit inside our facilities. But we don't want to do that for everything. We're not security experts, so we don't want to go out and try to compete on that level. We're not trying to provide electricity or packaging or banking. We want to enable that at Equinix with the right partners, with all the cloud providers and those capabilities, understanding our enterprise partners' needs and requirements, and then being able to deliver that. So, from our perspective, if you're trying to do it alone, you're going to have a very rough ride, because the differentiation in technology is so massive, but the evolution of the technology is even more rapid than we've ever seen in terms of the ability to move workloads and interact with the data, but also build for the future with not becoming obsolete before you deploy. So it's essential from our standpoint.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, sure. So, I'll take a simple example. Our customers came to us with this, very simple kind of, problem. They said, Tetra Pak, we want to improve the role of the package in terms of, direct-to-consumer communication. What can we do together, right? So at Tetra Pak, we said, well, okay, we came up with this idea of giving a digital identity to each and every package. So let's make the package be born digital, so to speak, yeah? And then we said, okay, now each and every package has a digital identity. What can we do? And in order to solve for this, that the package is born digital, how do we create an ecosystem around to create applications on top of this to enhance communication between brand owners and startups with the consumers? We have now created an ecosystem play around it where content producers and brand owners come in and sort of create applications, and consumers can sort of scan the package and sort of get interactive stories in terms of where the package comes from and so on and so forth. So that sort of ecosystem play where you have content producers, you have technology providers coming in and building applications is where I believe sort of partnerships play a very important role. We focus on what we are good at. We make the package sort of be born digital and sort of embed that digital identity in the package, in the physical package, and then we let the ecosystem sort of extract value on top of this.
Yeah, terrific. Adriana? Sort of new partnerships, and how do you manage them?
Yeah, completely new partnerships. So for us, it's the data around energy consumption and the source of where it's coming from, and companies wanting to, if you think about, the producers of Nest and the producers of Ring, and they want to know, de-identified, especially in Europe with GDPR data, to really be able to package that data and be able to then influence and sell and offer new offerings, et cetera, some of which we will want to be part of. A little bit, it's a conscious decision, like Mannu said, what we want to be part of and what we don't want to be part of. And so for that starts a whole set of opportunities for a utility to partner with security, to partner with heating companies, to partner with electric transportation companies. If you think about one of the goals that we have is converting another 10 million drivers in the Northeast to electric vehicles. Why do we want to do that? Obviously, we provide the electricity. We care about carbon footprint. That's a whole new set of opportunities for us that we do want to play in, and we partner with the auto companies, with the battery storage. We have a partnership with Tesla. We have the largest battery. It sounds like I'm advertising grid. I don't mean to be. No, seriously. It's just a lot of, this isn't the sort of thing that we would think about, but on the island of Nantucket this summer, largest installation of battery storage in the Northeast is going in. That is a whole plethora of opportunity. Elon Musk is just dying to work with me. I just keep pushing him off a little bit to, get it right. But yeah, but those are the sort of things that we're thinking about very carefully around what to do. And we're in the infancy stage in some of it, and others we're well on our way. So.
Partnership.
From a strategy perspective, we see fintechs, but also other matured startups or similar companies as partners and not as competitors. And we very much believe in partnerships, because from a Deutsche Bank perspective, when it comes to developing and implementing new products, we might be a little bit slow and probably also expensive. And so one of our core beliefs is that we leverage the external innovation and those superior products and services already out there in place, and offer them to our clients on our platform. And that is exactly what clients are asking for, right? As I explained earlier, as part of this kind of Amazon marketplace experience, every client is asking for. Do those third parties, those fintechs, those other companies be part of our platform with almost 20 million clients? Yes, of course, because that significantly lowers their client acquisition costs, so they're very much interested in offering their products and services on our platform. And the interesting thing, probably from a partnerships perspective, was more like the internal discussion that we had with our control functions internally, because the discussion that we had when we told them, look, now we are offering third parties products on our platform to our clients, keeping in mind that when the client contracts such a product or service, directly contracts with the third-party provider, they asked us to make sure that we fully understand in greatest detail what this third-party provider is doing, and that we can ensure at every point in time that everything they do is 100% fine and meets everything that we agreed with that company. And that is not a very efficient way of doing business, and keeps you away from scaling a business and from orchestrating external resources, meaning those partnerships, compared to, as we did in the past, and prioritizing internal resources, right? And so we had very tough discussions that as long as we are only just the platform provider, we are not responsible, even though we look at those companies offering products on our platform very much in detail, and we have, of course, very tough terms and conditions. We are not responsible for doing or for making sure that everything that they do and every second of the day is 100% fine and is not going the wrong way, right? And that was a tough discussion to agree that whenever we want to add a new company on our platform, that we take a look at them and that we make sure that they meet our requirements from a quality perspective, but that we are not required to guarantee every day that 100% of the stuff that they do is in line with what they offer. And that was a discussion that we had for minimum 12 months until we found an agreement with our control functions that we can add the way we agreed, and that what I described, in order to make sure that we can very easily and fast add new products and services to our platform, but get them off the platform as well if they don't perform.
So that's a great summary, I think, and then I'll open it up for some questions of sort of the paradox of working with these distributed partners is they do introduce risk into your system, and your normal internal sort of functions for vetting new products and services are probably really slow because they didn't have the same volume. And then in many ways, and what Frank just laid out, was this shift to having a robust data analytics capability that can monitor and turn off almost in real time is sort of one of these functions that has to be invested in and built out. Otherwise, it doesn't end up working. And then the flip side you tell to the risk management group is, you know, what's the risk of having a bad actor? We can quantify that. What's the risk of being so slow that someone else captures that ecosystem partner and they don't work with us, but they work with them, and making sure that's part of the conversation. So with that, I think we have about 10 or 15 minutes for a few audience questions. I'll be a human Slido. So ask away, and I'm going to sort of block the light here. I am waving at you, but, yeah.
So question for Mannu. Am I okay?
David, you're up, and then over here next.
So I'm thinking digital.
Could you identify yourself and your organization, please?
Trey Davis, I'm the Chief Information Officer for the School District of Lee County, Southwest Florida. Beautiful, sunny Southwest Florida. So I got a quick question for you around the kind of digital life cycle of your packaging. And if I'm thinking of maybe the provenance, securitization aspects of it, have you considered incorporating blockchain into your platform for tracking that life cycle, especially considering that a lot of it's perishable items and things along those lines?
Yes, absolutely. It is part of the conversation, although we don't want to make this into a technology play yet. So what we are saying is, let's first figure out how do we digitize the identity in itself, and then track the life cycle through the value chain, so to speak. And then the distributed ledger aspect of it, in terms of, you know, the first applications we are trying to solve for is more marketing, consumer marketing related. But then as we think about supply chain applications and sort of, you know, mediating trust between parties who don't generally talk to each other, we might sort of think about blockchain applications as well. But right now, our focus is largely around proving the value of digital identities and getting consumers to sort of, you know, accept the fact that packages are also born digital. And for that, we have not really factored in blockchain use cases yet.
So over here, name and organization, please.
My name is Ryan Cobb. I'm CTO for Brand Advisory in Baltimore. So when you create an ecosystem, you bring partners in, you share data, they may have information about your customers. I think of Netflix partnered with Amazon to build their business, and Amazon got into content and digital and became a competitor. So how do you think about that as you build your platform?
So I'll speak from another company perspective. So I'm on the board of directors of Perrigo, which is a consumer healthcare company. And Amazon approached us to put together an ibuprofen offering with their brand name on it. And we did that. And then we also sell Perigo's brand name product on Amazon, so it's the frenemies thing, right? And we talked about this a little bit earlier. First of all, lawyers have to be your best friend to make sure that you've got it set up properly, but then you also have to step back and take a look at it from a digital economy perspective and realize that if you don't do that, some other company will. So you have to recognize it as two separate revenue streams, and you have to set it up so that the whole ecosystem is optimized. Geoff actually pointed out when we were talking about this earlier that it's no different to what Walmart did 25 years ago with private label. And so it's just now you're on a platform, an exchange platform called Amazon, right, where you're a consumer, you're a seller, you're a customer of, and you're a customer to the point that Ray made. And those things you have to work out. It's new antitrust laws, it's new legal, it's new privacy, it's a whole new realm, and we're all coming together to figure out how we continue to do that properly.
Yeah, I think to add on that too, you need to look at the ecosystem evolution and where it's at. And so in the front end, the barrier to entry to become a copycat, for lack of a better term, is pretty broad, because there's going to need to be market understanding. That's where you saw some of the the example used with Netflix and Amazon. Some of the cloud providers started to create their own CDNs and show that's a marketplace they wanted to play in. But then you started to see a market dynamic shift where companies like Apple did it for very different reasons because of the App Store and Siri and others. And so you started to see this market shift. So it's understanding the maturity of the ecosystem, where it's at. You're going to have an evolution where different technologies start to become more commonplace as a platform provider, or taking part in that platform, understanding your niche, what you want to use it for, and then making sure that the barrier to entry into whatever that technology is you're providing or using, it gives you the ability to stay in front of that that copycat type model, just so you don't become disrupted out there in the market.
There's a question up there.
Yeah, Michael Schrag with MIT. I'd like to ask my bread and butter question. This you're transitioning to a platform. How challenging is data governance for this? How good of a job did you do on the data governance? Because oftentimes the organizations I spend time with, all they have is their structured stuff, and it's outmoded and unable to provide the ecosystem point that you're arguing for. I'm particularly curious with the legacy companies like Tetra.
I mean, right now we are not yet there in terms of thinking about data governance we are just getting started with our program, right? So, but I guess this challenge, once we have a lot of data coming in and a lot of consumers scanning these kinds of packages all along, I think this question will become very important. We are thinking about it purely from the perspective of, PII information, GDPR compliance, and things like this right now, and getting that in order. However, really around data governance in itself, there's not so much focus on this use case that I just talked about. Yeah, so.
To a large extent, that also holds true for Deutsche Bank. We are very much focusing on complying with regulations. We just started our data transformation journey, and as far as data governance is concerned and having a concept in place, I think we need at least 1 or 2 more years until we have something in place that really one can call structured and sustainable data governance.
So we're taking a little bit of a different view. We're never going to get it perfectly right. We have data stewards. We called up companies like Palantir and said, what would we need to do to have you work on our data and give us insights and things like that? And we changed our mindset to just make sure the data is secure. Wherever it resides, find it. Have data scientists work with it. And when I hear people, and I have an IT background, talk about data lakes and all that, yeah, Lisa, go, we have to do that too. But in the meantime, that can't get in the way of garnering insights. And so whether it's operational data stores, whether it's a Hadoop data, whatever it is, right, CRUD is the important thing. Who can create, replicate, update, and delete, but get to the data because it's a race. And so that's how we're thinking about it.
I think it's essential, and it's a question we ask as a platform enabler, is to understand, do you have a data governance strategy? And a lot of them are forming, but with some of the compliance issues that pop up, as well as understanding application profiles to how those applications are going to interact, who's going to be exposed to them, it's essential. And so we get nervous when companies are like, yes, we want to move into this platform model and go down this route of creating analytic capabilities and data lakes or AI and machine learning, but there's no structure around it because it opens us up to a tremendous amount of liability. So we always, those are areas where we pump the brakes and say, let's make sure we understand what we're trying to accomplish and how we're going to get through this process. So it's essential. You can't go into this new realm of platform adoption and service without building some type of structure around it.
I hear you.
Question over here in the corner.
Khan from the CIO of Edible Arrangements. Curiosity on your posture for the industrial IoT devices, especially at the grid level. And also, is 5G going to be impactful when it matures in terms of data delivery? So you got the device, you got the sensors, you got data delivery. And then are you going to secure it through blockchain methodology?
Yeah, so look, IoT of any nature around SCADA systems is something that we tread very, very cautiously on, right? For the obvious reasons of cybersecurity. There's something to be said for air gapping and for manual switching and things like that until we can crack what we do. So until we can crack and make sure that we maintain the level of cybersecurity amount. Having said that, if we want to achieve our aspiration of the digital future, self-healing, et cetera, it is something we're approaching. I always tell people that in my business, you don't talk about your cybersecurity strategy. So we're treading very lightly, very carefully, I should say, but it is something that we're entertaining. We're not sitting back and saying no, because we will get disrupted if we do.
I'll touch on the 5G aspect of this. It's going to be transformational. It absolutely will. We're a little early in there. We're working with the who's who of the vendors that are out there, understanding what are the different application scenarios that are going to happen. For us, it's about making sure the companies that are deploying 5G and this IoT interaction, people really understand what type of data they want to interact with. And so, with a 1 millisecond link state reaction time based on the standard, you're going to have a lot of transaction happening at the RAN or the vRAN, and then understanding how you can correlate that into interactive data and then accelerate that overall flow on the terrestrial network is going to be important. So from us, from an edge distribution model, there's a ton of opportunity, but there's also a lot of development that has to take place, because you're not just going to go out and slap up new 5G radios all over the place. It's new tower infrastructure, it's new fiber infrastructure. So from our standpoint, it becomes a huge market-changing shift. But I think we're very, very early in that model. But it also drives, it's going to drive to the evolution of IoT. We do a ton of work with autonomous cars. 5 milliseconds equals 30 feet. And so of interaction. And when we're talking about how that's going to displace cars, how that's going to change insurance rate, how that's going to create interactions on the street level, it's massive. So lot to come there.
Very quick one, and then I'm going to close it down. So.
Yeah, my name is Ilya Kavanov. I'm Schneider Electric, responsible for cybersecurity and privacy. So thanks for saying cybersecurity 8 times and privacy 3 times. Okay? Thinking from a risk perspective, we're all pursuing this platform strategies. In terms of your business, what kind of new cybersecurity and privacy risks you're bringing through these platforms, and how you think about these risks?
So, I'm not sure I got the question. What new ideas around cybersecurity?
No, what new
cybersecurity risks?
What new cybersecurity risks?
As a result of the platform, sort of.
Anything that has an IP address on it is a brand new risk, right? The behavioral, the analytics, and taking a look at there's a whole new risk around how people are going from physical all the way to the inside the substations for us, and the behavioral analytics and what they carry. I mean, the new technology brings with it, there's just a tremendous amount more. I'm not sure I'm answering your question very well, but there's just a huge amount of cyber. It's not just the endpoint devices anymore. there's network threats. So people always worried about endpoint devices and getting to those. Now you've got network security to worry about, right?
I think in our context, we're just working with the best technology companies. We know anything that's connected is exposed to that risk.
Yeah.
So we just work with the best companies out there to secure the infrastructure in our customer operations connected to this. And so we are discussing this at length with HP in terms of how do we secure our customers' infrastructure.
We make sure our Schneider Electrics and our ABBs don't have XPs.
I would probably answer it from a client's perspective. If clients buy product and services through us as a platform, they usually transfer data through APIs into the IT environment of the third-party provider, right? And for us, it's very important that the IT environment of our third-party providers or our cooperation partners do meet respective requirements from an IT security perspective. It is very important that clients do understand what's happening, so we very much focus on explaining to them that their data, according to their order, gets transferred to the third-party provider. And we need to make sure that the third-party provider only does those, let's say, analytics or value-add services with client's data that we and the client agreed on, right? And that is really, really important. And we try to be very detailed as far as that is concerned in our terms and conditions with our cooperation partners. Did any of our cooperation partner do anything so far that did not meet what we agreed and what clients agreed with them? No. Let's see what's going to happen if that will be the case one day. I'm a little bit concerned that if something like this happens, we might create negative network effects actually in our ecosystem, right? And that is one of my concerns, and we need a plan B for that situation.
Final word.
I don't underestimate your security perimeter. What we found to the point that everybody's talking about up here, if it's exposed, it will be attacked, and we've seen that with the partner level that we deal with. And don't underestimate what your partners and counterparties are doing with their security profiles. Make sure you trust but verify. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to say a couple of words. This would have been a really hard conversation to have about 4 or 5 years ago, because what we knew about platforms was largely informed by kind of a business to consumer set of models. And what we're seeing is the beginning of a transformation on sort of the B2B and what the sort of prerequisites are within firms and how it is that they're approaching that. And so of course it's an interesting look, and I'd just like to thank everyone for sharing their insights. So. Thank you.